What's up, Rock the Crown? Welcome to Rock the Crown. What's up, Crown Nation? We're going to get everybody a few seconds to come on in. We know that we've been doing these shows live. So reach out to all of your friends and family. Let's give you all about 10 to 20 seconds. And while we're doing that, Nefertari is going to tell us what we're going to be talking about today. What's up, Crown Nation?
Hey, Crown Nation. It's so good to see you guys tonight. As Naima said, we have been going live these past few weekends. We are in season 4, episode 5. We are really coming with some great stuff today. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Nefertari, and with me I have my queens, Naima and Daia. Welcome again. And we have a phenomenal guest today, Dr. Halallah Hazziez, who is also my mother. I'm really so excited to have her this evening. She is the author of the book, Do You Have the Sense That God Gave a Goose? And so we're going to dive into that today. Just to give you a little background on her, she is definitely a businesswoman, a spiritual leader. She's a counselor, a mother of 7, was married for nearly 52 years before my father passed. And she's worked in the management for many, many years. And so as we listen to her today, you're going to pick up on a lot of that. It takes a lot to be able to manage things, right? And so whether that's your family, we as mothers and wives, we definitely get that, right? So it takes a lot for managing, whether it's your business, team leaders with different companies and whatnot. And so we're really excited to be able to get into that. And so we want to hear from Dr. Halallah on how she's empowering women, empowering anybody really who's in her pathway. She's just so awesome, right? If you don't know, you're going to get to figure that out this evening. So welcome, Dr. Halallah. We appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for inviting me.
Wa alaikum assalam. So as we get into it, we know that, Allah begins the process of creation and then he repeats it, right? And so he created excellence and beauty in humanity. And so what we often think and talk about is our development and evolving as a people, especially as African Americans. So we strive to just have that balance in life. Like I said, whether it's marriage, family, communities, business partners, or whatever. And so it takes a great skill in order to make things harmonious. Can't get that word out. Harmonious. To create success and make good sense of it. Okay. And so what we're going to do is kind of talk about, we look around Allah's creation. We know that we see the moon, we see the stars, trees and plants and animals and all of that. And so everything kind of takes its course and has its place. And so the things that Allah has created, we learn from that. When you think about the airplane, we were inspired by that. And so we were inspired from the birds. And so everything that Allah has created, we're able to look at that and get something from it. And so today, what we're going to hear about are these geese that we've been talking about. So do you have the sense that God gave a goose? So Dr. Halallah, with the name of the book, tell us about where this name came from, why you named it. What does it mean?
Basically, I have to go back a little bit. I was a little girl raised in the country, my grandmother until I was about 10 years old. And it was a phrase that I used to hear her say quite a bit to people. You don't have the sense that God gave a goose. So I didn't really know exactly what it meant, but I knew that it wasn't a good thing not to have a sense of a goose, person being human and so forth and so on. So I would say maybe about 5-6 years ago, I started kind of, looking at things and reflecting on the Iqra as far as reading signs, looking at Allah's creation. So when I start kind of researching on the goose, I saw that there were like 7 major different lessons that could be learned from the goose. Mm-hmm. And in that number 7 stuck out to me. And when we look at al-Islam, there's a miracle of 7 in the Quran, as well as in our path as Muslims. When we look at the 7, if we focus on Hajj, we're making the 7 tawafs, and we make the 7 rounds from Safa to Marwa. When we're on Muzdalifah, we collect the 21 stones, and for the 3 jamras, and 7 times 3 is 21. So we throw the 7 stones at each jamra. When we look at the levels of the earth, there's 7 levels down. The universe is 7 levels up. We have 7 levels of heaven, and the 7 goes on and on. And if we look at the Bismillah, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, and if we take away those reading aids, and what I mean by that, as far as the vowels and so forth, signs and so forth, and just look at the letters, there's 19 letters there. But if you just look at the Bismillah itself, Allah has 4 and the Bis has 3. So within the Bismillah, you have 7. So in al-Islam, we find 7 all the way around. So since there were 7 lessons with the Goose, the book only has 7 chapters. So all of that is fitting in with Allah's creation, trying to read the signs. And there's a lot for us to learn if we just kind of slow down, turn off the TV, turn off the radio, and just actually listen. So the name of the book itself was something that phrases that I heard down in the country that I would hear my grandmother say.
Okay. Wow. That's very great story as to what, led you. I think it was an inquiring mind that really led you to, to do the research and then come up with this, wonderful understanding of it. So what specifically was it that inspired you to say, you know what, I'm going to take this information that I have and I'm going to put it in a book? So what inspired you to actually write the book?
Well, when I started looking at the lessons, I was really kind of doing it for the family. I wanted something to leave to my grandchildren and children. And a lot of that was just kind of like, when you look at some of those lessons, the senses and so forth that they're looking at, it's basic information, but things that we still leave out every day that we don't really think about. Working as a team, working as a family unit, making sure that we open up the gate and let everyone in. So everyone can feel like they're included, have a voice, so forth and so on. So that's true within companies as well as families. So it was really kind of something to lead the children.
That's wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you.
So you were her inspiration, Nefertari. That's wonderful. A legacy. I love that. So, okay. So in your, discovering and in your research of the phrase that your grandmother used, can you tell us, what does it mean? What does it mean? Do you have the sense that God gave a goose? So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, when we look at the different lessons, like the first one is an uplift. Okay. Is the first lesson. If you watch and study the geese, they fly in a V formation. They have one leader, and they branch out into this V formation. And as they fly, because they're all flying together, there's an updraft, which more or less they're in unison to the point where no one is carrying a heavier load than the other. So this gives them the speed that they need, and nobody's looking back trying to see what the other goose is doing. Whether you're doing your job, everybody's looking forward, and they know what their goals are, where they're headed, and they're moving forward. So with that type of an updraft and so forth, we tend to look back a lot at things, We worry about what might have been, what should have been instead of what is. So as the geese move forward, they're moving on what is, and they're not worrying about what's happening behind them.
Excelente.
Geese.
So with that moving forward, we know that you have had a background in management for nearly 30 years before retiring. And through that management, there's a saying in the book that the bird is gifted with all of the senses that a team needs. What did you mean by that? And can you talk talk a little bit about on having effective teams?
Well, part of having a successful team is more or less being able to have cross training. You know, it's not good enough to be the leader and something happens to you and no one else can step in. So with all the different levels that's within that particular team, someone needs to know everyone else's job or someone else's job so they can step in. Also, being a leader, like I was saying about opening the gate, because when you have teams, you have people that are vocal, then you have people that will sit back, and you have to pull them in. And sometimes those people that are, you know, not as boisterous as others can have some outstanding ideas. Also learn that when you empower people and when they feel like they have a dog in the fight and they have the sense of some ownership in what's going on, that is not just the manager's idea, that they have some buy-in and they can move forward with the goal and the objective because they have some ownership there.
Okay, excellent. I love that sense of ownership because, of course, people want to feel appreciated as well. And ownership often is tied to appreciation. And so as we're talking about that, something else when we talk about ownership and you know, being leaders, there's a lot of talk in the book about communication. How important is communication with your team members, your family, your children, work and business? How important is that?
There's three things that's very important about communication. Communicate, communicate, communicate. And the biggest part of communication, well, one of the biggest things is listening. And then knowing how to read the vibes or body language, because body language plays a very, very, more so than the voicing of language and so forth, body language plays a very huge part. So we have to be able to be good listeners. A lot of times when people are talking, some people are waiting for you to take a breath so they can talk. Active listening is really being able to say, did I understand you to say? So it's clear. You're not assuming someone said one thing and you heard something different. You know, so all of that plays a part in it. And being able to just kind of shut the world out sometimes and actually sit down and communicate, not just with the teams, but with families, with your spouses, and so forth.
I love that active communication or active listening because, again, I think that we've kind of grown up in a society now, especially with social media. People love to react. And so active listening is kind of on the downplay right now. So really focusing on making sure that we are actively listening in order to not just communicate, but also to lead. So that's important. Thank you so much for doing that.
Alhamdulillah.
And speaking of communication, you know, when we talk about communication being important on all levels, you know, one of the levels that I'm thinking about is marriage. So, you know, to have a marriage, you know, being married, it's like managing a business as well. And so, yes, of course, you have to have that communication tip top shape for your business to run. Same thing with marriages. And so, but marriage today, it's a little bit more, it's more known for it not to work out like back in the day. You know, it's like you stay in it to win it. No matter what's happening, you know, you just, that D word is just not acceptable. You just kind of get through things. So one of the things that you talk about in your book is you talk about the geese and how they stay together for life, and how they're affectionate toward one another. And so I just want to know, like, what advice do you have? What can you tell us about how we can use that example in life as human beings? Sense of belonging and feeling like, you know, we matter in the relationship.
Right. I think I understand. Yes, correct. One of the lessons of the geese or the goose is that they do. And if they could actually have a wedding ceremony and so forth, there would be no divorce. They stay together for life. And the lesson with that, even though divorce is permissible, you know, it's one of those acts that's frowned upon. So I would say, first off, do your homework. Do your homework. Learn more about that individual, whether it's the man for the woman or the woman for the man, and so forth and so on. Now, true enough, there's a hadith that says that you really don't get to know a person, you know, three ways: live with them, travel with them, do business with them. Well, we know that we're not going to live with them before we marry them, but you may be able to view them on how they handle business or in travel. Okay. Also, in different seasons, sometimes we're too quick to decide on marriage. Sometimes you may need to see a person in different seasons. And I'm not talking about the weather. How they handle different things in life is a season for them. Okay. So, and checking out them with people that they know. And sometimes you have people, they'll say, yeah, that's a good brother. He says his prayers. You see him at the masjid all the time. That's a good brother. Yes, sister, that's a good choice. But that brother may be a totally different brother at home. Okay. So you still have to kind of do, you know, and if he's been married before, there's nothing wrong with talking to the ex-wife and so forth and so on. Another thing is more or less realizing what you're seeing is what you're getting. Sometimes people go into a situation thinking, well, yeah, he's like that, but, you know, I'm going to be able to change him. You're not going to be able to change a person. Only a person can change themselves if they want to change. But you can train, not change, but train. You know, because most people, if they feel that they're going to be rewarded something good for doing good, they'll do good. So it's the same way with a spouse. If you call them a certain way and they know that when they hear that call, that they're going to be rewarded, they will be quick to come. So a lot of times now, as Nefertari was saying about the numbers, I did look at some of the numbers on divorce. And from the 1800s coming upward, things started to increase with divorce, especially after World War II, because women were in the workplace while the men were at war, and they became a little bit more self-sufficient. So the divorce rates went up then, but then it came down again in the 1950s. So the good news is 2019, the numbers are starting to go down. And that's because a lot of the millennials are waiting later to get married, and maybe they can make better decisions on what they're doing and so forth and so on. I'm not suggesting that people wait late to get married. My husband and I, you know, I was 14 years old. I'm in my 70s now. And there was good times and there were bad times. But if you don't hang in there through the bad times, you may not ever see the good ones. So sometimes people come in with, well, girl, if it don't work out, I'm just going to go, or I'm just going to go. So they come in with an exit plan instead of a stay plan. So instead of saying, if this happened, well, let me go back and look at my expectations and see just how important that really was to me. Is that worth leaving? Can we work that out? And don't be afraid to have some type of therapy, some counseling. You know, I know a lot of, I would say a lot of men that I have talked to, you can't really use that word counseling. It's like, well, let's have some dialogue. Dialogue sounds better. Counseling is kind of like a fear. It's like somebody's getting ready to beat me up. And it's really not about that. So there's different ways, I would say, if you do your homework before you actually get into the marriage, it may save you some things. But once it happens, don't be so quick to get out, because whatever those faults that he has, you go to somebody else and you're going to have a whole nother list of faults, because no one's perfect. At least you know what you got over here. And inshallah that you will be able to work with that.
Excellent, excellent. So let's kind of go through the chapters if we can. Just a small overview. The first chapter, of course, being the uplift. We know that during the uplift, a good leader usually exhibits traits of honesty, integrity, and that, you know, scholars believe that people who are, you know, they're highly effective as a front runner when they have this, because, of course, there's a sense of fairness and things like that. We know that the geese don't necessarily think as we do, so their sense of fairness is just kind of like innate inside of them. But when we start thinking about us as individuals, I think it's something you were talking about when, you know, studying people through marriage and really getting to know them. I think that what happens is people kind of get married and then they start going, you know, we mentioned earlier how the geese don't look back. But then people start to do the look back, right? As the marriage progresses, they look back like, oh, I should not have done this, or maybe I should have examined that more, or maybe, but we all know that there are different stages of a relationship. So kind of talk a little bit more about how the geese don't spend their time looking back and how they fly with confidence, and how we as people should be doing that as well.
Well, as far as the looking back part, like I was saying, that when we do tend to do that, we dwell on what should have been or what might have been, instead of being in the presence of and enjoying what is. So with that, we have to learn different behavior. You know, it's and wanting to. You have to be able to more or less focus on the point of I want to be able to make this a success. You need to be able to put the time in, because if you look at business and you look at marriage and you look at a business, if most people that have a business put the time that they put into their marriage into business, their business would fail. The business would fail. Because it's like not necessarily taking it for granted, but it's like life gets in the way. There's children, there's work, and you become like ships passing in the night. And so you have to get back to where you were thinking about why you married this person. Focusing more or less kind of like on the family life itself. How can we improve that in the here and the now? And it's very hard sometimes to stay in the here and now, because, you know, we do learn from our past, you know, because if we made mistakes, then we'll want to carry that forward, but you don't want to bring the baggage from the past. And a lot of times people can move from one relationship to another relationship, and they're carrying that same baggage. And it's not good baggage. Listen, it's not good baggage. Most of the time, it's not good baggage because we tend to hold on to those things that shoulda, coulda, woulda. This should have worked out this way for me, but it didn't. But that Allah has for you, can no one keep it from you? And if it's not meant to be, no one can give it to you. So sometimes we have to reserve ourselves to the point where letting it be okay with my soul because it is the will of Allah. One of the other lessons with the geese, they only have one leader at a time. So with that, we have to learn the different shifts and responsibilities to know if we need to step up or someone needs to step up. And then that leader has to have the wherewithal to understand when it's time to fall back and let someone else take the lead. So when you look at the geese, when the lead gets tired, he falls back and someone from the rear, one of the geese from the rear falls forward. Now, sometimes that's very hard to do, to let go of being a leader. I can bear witness that last year I had several strokes. I could not talk. I could not walk. Only by the grace and mercy of Allah that things turned around. But during that time, people say that I'm a controller. Now, I don't think that I'm a controller, okay? I really don't. My kids seem to think so. But anyway, so that was very hard for me because I'm used to having the reins, so to speak. I'm the one that they would come to, well, Mama, what you think? Or should I? Or, asking for advice and so forth and so on. So at that point, all praise is due to Allah that they had been taught how to take the reins. Because at that time, the responsibilities and everything was shifting. They were taking care of me. And so that's just an example of being able to let go when you have to let go.
Yeah, she did let go, but she still said, I'm the mama.
Yeah, I did say that.
I'm the mama. She's like, I'm gonna let y'all do this, but I just want to remind you, I'm the mama.
I think that's very important to be able to know. And we talked about that a little bit in our last episode about, controlling versus being in control. Mm-hmm. And I think it's very important that you kind of know those roles, like you said, when we, now, our children are getting older and they're able to do more for us, we have to kind of take a step back and, allow them to kind of take the reins somewhat, but still knowing their place, right? Mm-hmm. So in chapter 2, the title, I believe, is The Drag and Resistance of Flying Alone. Mm-hmm. So you talk a little bit about when the geese get out of formation and he starts to feel like the friction
right.
of being alone. And then after realizing that he gets back into formation to take the benefit of the joint labor.
Right.
So I think that is just a very important lesson to learn on community, on support, one another. And then also on, since we're, relating it to business, on team bonding. What can you add to this about the drag and resistance of flying alone?
Well, basically the things that you just stated, as far as, sometimes if we get out of line and say, well, I can handle this, I can do this on my own. Okay. Maybe you have a partnership in a business and it doesn't work out. So you feel like I'm going to strike out on my own and get this done. Sometimes we will, because we want this to happen and we keep pushing, even though Allah is giving us signs that, no, you need to go back and do da-da-da-da, but we're going to push forward and try to make it work because we don't want to go back to say, well, I was wrong, or I was this, and so forth and so on. But we have to realize too that only Allah can say be, and it is. So we need the help. None of us can do it ourselves. If you look at the leverage, you can see this huge boulder. And you've probably seen pictures of this mountain, and there's a huge boulder, and there's one man there, like he's holding the boulder, trying to push it up this hill. And then all of a sudden you see many people coming and helping with the leverage of that and pushing that boulder uphill. The job becomes a lot easier. And sometimes these are hard lessons to learn. We're not on an island by ourselves, and we need each other. And we need each other to the point where I called it a war chest. I have friends, I have family that are part of a war chest. And these are prayer warriors. People that you can reach out to when you really, really, really need some prayer and you feel like it's going to go further than the ceiling because you have seen some of these people pray and things happen. That's the war chest that you want. So all of that helps to fight the resistance when everyday life gets in the mix. You know, it's like somebody misunderstood, or this didn't happen, and this is a tearful day, and somebody that you can call and say, it's going to be okay. You don't have to deal with the friction by yourself. You need me at the midnight? I can be your midnight partner. Call me. So it's good to have that war chest. It's good to have those friends that you can call any time of the day, family that you can call. So a lot of that cuts down on that resistance, because when you feel like, I got this, I don't need nobody else. And we all need somebody. We all need someone.
We all need somebody.
But also in that particular lesson, there's a hadith that talks about using the benefit of 5 before 5.
Mm-hmm.
And those 5 is the youth. It's a benefit to use your youth before the old, your wealth before poverty, your health before you're sick, your lifeline before death. So all of those things we need to be able to, and your free time was the 5th one. Because sometimes we misuse that free time. And then when we don't have that anymore, we're too busy to get back that time that we lost.
Mm-hmm.
And as you know, with youth, the youth strength, they're a lot stronger than as you get older. So when you look back and before you know it, you know, those younger years are behind you. You may still have the wherewithal to give the wisdom and the advice, but when you're talking about, you know, walking the malls and doing this and this and that, you know, even though I have my gait back as far as walking, I still cannot do, you know, it's the thing where like, okay, had to go through physical therapy, had to do these kinds of things like that. So sometimes it's like, okay, I'm getting ready to get up out of this chair. And then I might remember that I can't jump up as fast as I used to.
Mm-hmm.
But through the help of Allah, I can get up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a blessing. And with that, you know, the people at the hospital talked about miracles and this and that, you know, how quick things and some things came back and so forth and so on. But with all of that, it was more or less looking at the signs of things. There's something else that I need to do.
Mm.
Allah did not leave me here not to make some type of a footprint, something else. There's another purpose, something that I need to do.
Mhm.
So with that, I accepted coming on Rock the Crown. I'm not big on pictures. Let's long TV show. I saw that. I said, Nefertari, TV show? TV show? You know, she says, yeah, that's kind of how it is. You know, that's kind of how it is.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she was doing some honking to get you to come on the show.
Yes, yes,
Which
yes,
leads
yes.
to Chapter
That's-
4.
That's for sure.
Encouragement.
That's
Right.
for sure. That's for sure. So that's another thing. You know, like one of the lessons is it's like getting that encouragement
Mhm.
from behind.
Right.
You know, like the geese when they honk and so forth and so on. You know,
Right.
it's like we back here, we got you, we moving
Right.
forward, keep it going.
I
That's
love it.
Yeah, you know. And then the other thing is like, you know, when you see them flying south for the winter, the northern birds, the northern geese going, and some of that is for food,
Mhm.
because you know, being in the north, you know, things freeze over, the grass is not really available, so forth and so on. And the other thing is relaxation. They kicking back in Florida.
Yeah, Diane and I like to kick it back in
They
Florida in the
kicking back.
winter time too.
The birds are kicking back in Florida. Relaxation. Now, to rejuvenate.
Mhm.
Mhm.
How many of us taking a lesson from the geese take the time? Now I know you ladies travel all over the place, but a lot of people it's work and it's you know, working at the masjid or working on the jobs and so forth and so on, and never really take the time to just kind of relax.
Mhm.
Maybe once a year, if that. And they say, well, when's the last time you've been on vacation? Maybe 10 years ago. But when it comes to
Yeah, Naima, we know that's not you.
Yeah.
when it comes to refilling your cup, when it comes to refilling the cup,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because as mothers, you know, you can see where this one needs this, your husband needs this, you know, all of this is coming out of the cup. And at some point, if you don't go back and refuel, your cup is going to be empty. And what happens? You know, you blow off steam. This happens, that happens, you know, and everybody's looking at you like, what's wrong with her?
Right.
Yeah,
Because
that's why they call us crazy.
you've reached your limit.
Right.
So at some point, you know, and not just with the women, but men too.
Mhm.
You know, our spouses, they need to learn to relax. And some people, it's an educational thing for them.
Mhm. It is.
Other people, it's easy to relax. Because some folks, it's a thing where like, I should be doing, even though they're sitting there, you know, in Florida somewhere. It's like, dog, you know, if I was home, I could have been fixing on the air conditioner, or I could have been doing this, or I could have been, you know, it's always, instead of being in the here and the now and enjoying the relaxation, you're thinking about what shoulda, coulda, woulda, what I should have been doing.
So we're going to move on to the next chapter, the third chapter, which you actually mentioned some things earlier already about rotating that leadership when you spoke about the experiences you had last year and your children having to kind of, you know, take the lead and you kind of fall back. Well, so we understand that the leadership position does change and that there's different times where you need that recharge, like you're talking about now, even with the, you know, at the time when they get ready to go south. So the recharge to kind of build up their stamina and all of that, you know, when the energy gets low. So I just wanted to make mention that that's the third chapter, even though you kind of spoke on that. But if there's anything else that you want to mention on that topic, you can do that now.
Okay, as far as leadership,
The leadership and how, you know, when the geese fly in that V formation, you know, you've got the leader up front.
mm-hmm.
all do it, and then sometimes there's places like it's almost like you can't be on the front line all the time.
Right. And I think I had covered that. It's realizing when you need to fall back, and then when that person needs to fall back, being sure that they have someone with the skill sets that can take that leadership position and keep things moving. So that's basically when you start looking at teamwork, being able to be a manager. Like I would say, I would ask someone to do something, give them an assignment, but I always expected them to do more than what I've asked them to do. And basically what I mean by that is that there could have been something that I did not see that they see. So don't just limit the assignment to what I told you, because I could have left out something. And being in a leadership position, I've learned that it's not necessarily a positive thing to have a bunch of yes people around you. You don't learn from yes people. There's a way to respectfully disagree, and you learn from disagreements. It doesn't always have to be a push and pull. Doesn't always have to be a fight with something. Once we learn to respect each other's opinion, and realize that the leader doesn't know everything. No one person knows it all. That's why you have a team. I remember Imam Muhammad, Imam Wardeen, saying at one time about when you look at an individual, and he says, no more, like you can see this negative and this and this and that, but everybody has at least one positive thing about them. And he said, even if you just say that brother can fry an egg really good. So that's one positive. So we all have something positive that we can say about a family member. There may be a whole lot of negative stuff there. And the same thing with team members. Once they feel that they are appreciated, because sometimes people can work hard and do this and this and that, but they may not make it to where they want to go. They may not make the goal, but you can see that they're trying. And it's not enough. I've found too, and I talk about it a little bit in the book, that when the team, instead of the whole team being recognized, a lot of times it's the leader. They get the bonuses, they get the promotion, and get the raises. So the team itself needs to be recognized. And I found that people will do just about anything for you to make sure that the goals are met and so forth and so on, if you recognize them. If they feel needed, want it, and that is not about you. It's bigger than you. Oh, well.
Someone wants to recognize you.
Oh, well.
I love it.
So we mentioned chapter 3, rotation of leadership. We also touched on encouragement from behind. We talked about punking from behind, and I think you're also speaking about that just now when we talk about team building and showing appreciation, and encouragement to your team. And then moving on to the 5th chapter, where we talk about taking care of the wounded or the sick. So can you tell us, we never really think about, this is so interesting how we're thinking about birds as having these, human characteristics, and so learning from them and how they do things. Can you talk a little bit about chapter 5 and what happens when, the geese get wounded and how do the others step in?
Right. Yes. When they're flying in that V formation and so forth, um, sometimes, you know, the birds they do get wounded by hunters or fly into something or get sick, just a physical ailment and so forth and so on. So you've seen the movies sometimes or how people handle people when they get sick. That they become the weakest link, so they may be thrown off the ship. You know what I'm saying? So with the geese, at least 2 of them will fly down with the wounded or the sick, and they stay with them until they are healed or till they die. And then they try to catch back up with the rest of the flock, or they join a new one and fly on. Now, when we look at that as far as being human, sometimes we don't step up when it comes to taking care of the sick, taking care of the elderly. Even if we're so busy to the point of, maybe you can't physically be there. And with COVID and all of that going on now, a lot of the rules at hospitals and so forth and so on have changed. But just kind of reaching out to see what you can do as a human being, as a sister, as a Muslim, as a brother. How can I help? How's the finances going? Do you need anything? Well, what about food? Your bills paid? Even if you can't physically be there, just kind of reaching out, letting people know, I have you. I'm lifting you up in prayer. I'm praying for you. Anything that you need, let me know. I'll be there for you. So a lot of times it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind when we don't see people around. And with COVID, some of the massages are just kind of getting back together and so forth and so on. But when you don't see a brother or a sister, it should touch you enough to want to say, I haven't seen them in a couple of weeks, as far as wondering what's going on, especially elderly people that that are living by themselves and so forth. So the geese, they have that much care and love for one another that they will hop their trip and go down to take care of. So when we stop and think about it, how many of us are doing what we can do? Can we do more to make sure that the sick is taken care of? I know you guys have is some type of group that you have that you tend to kind of do food for people and take turns and things like that. That's really great to do. So, people that are doing that, they are to be commended for those types of things. But we need more of that. We need more of that.
Okay, excellent. So we're almost getting down to the end of the book, but in chapter 6, we kind of spoke about this earlier already when the geese fly south for the winter in the northern hemisphere. And thinking about, the geese flying south, this also can kind of be an example of, the family keeping the ties together and basically staying together during the time of transition. We can put it that way. Mm-hmm. Meaning that whether it's transition in terms of like you're moving or there's difficulty in the family, but just understanding that as you were speaking about earlier, seasons and
Mhm.
understanding those seasons within ourselves, our teams, and our family. So you want to make at least one more point about the geese flying south for the winter in the northern hemisphere.
Sure. I would say that it's more or less understanding what job is needed at what time. You know, just like how a squirrel would gather its nuts. You know, you find some of us have the thought process that it's gonna be summer all the time, that there's never gonna be a lean year or a lean season. So we don't start putting things back and gathering for the time when we may really need something. It was one of the things about doing the first res. We were always taught to be prepared for any type of emergency. We did canning, we put water back, all of those kinds of things like that, preparing for a day that we really might need these things. So some of that is in preparation because they know that I need to leave this place because this storm is coming, this snow is coming, this cold weather is coming, and I need to think about the rest of my family and team. So I need to go to where the work is, where I can feed my family, what I need to do. So that's part of that. But then when they go there, they're not really working as hard because part of that is revving up, getting the rest that's needed because they're going to have to come back north. Going south is not a permanent thing. They're going to have to come back north. So it's a migrating, but still you have to go back home.
And I love that concept of being prepared, emergency preparedness, because of course we know we live in a time right now where emergency preparedness is essential. So, at the beginning of the pandemic 2 years ago, everybody was like going to buy toilet paper and food and things like that. And even happening right now, on the news, they were just talking about like the shortages that we're having with all of the containers that are, taking longer to get here. And so I'm not sure if people have been noticing on the shelves that the food isn't there, but it's definitely a time to go south. We need to be preparing for this winter all the way, as they were saying, through the spring in order for us to make sure that we have what we need for, excuse me, ourselves and our families. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That point.
Very good.
That was on my mind today, pressing hard. I was like, we need to start getting some things packed. And then I thought about, I got these sea rations in the garage. If we get down to it, we just need to add a little water, mix it up. Any of y'all that have ever been camping or in the military, you know what that is. So we're getting down pretty much to our last chapter, chapter 7, and you have touched on this. You have touched on this one, Geese mate for life. And so it kind of the way we talked earlier about our relationship and marriage and just staying in it to win it and not giving up. But I kind of want to mention just a little bit of something different with a twist on it. Maybe you can talk about that. But the strength of the family, and think about how like even a mother is with her cubs, so to speak, and even with her spouse in a way, or a father is to protect his family. And I won't say that. You'll beat somebody up. I was going to say I'll cut you now. When you get to that point. So with the geese, despite their size, they're never afraid to defend their tribe and defend their youth. Their young ones. And so kind of talk about that, as far as, having the affection toward one another, being able to defend, when they need to, you got to handle your business or whatever. So let's hear from you on that.
Well, in looking at and studying, the geese and everything, um, well, you have the goose and you have a gander. Okay, the gander is the male, and the male species of the goose is a little bit more tamed. It's the female is the aggressive one. That's the one that will fight you. And people have been attacked. And especially if you come too close to their nest, as mothers, that, you will fight. You will fight for your children and protection for them and so forth and so on, So, but within those birds, it is the female that is the aggressor. Now, that's what they said, aggressor. They didn't say, she will or may not, but the male is the one that's tame. But also, I don't know whether you guys are old enough. There was a song that talked about the long-necked goose. And the gander, when you look at the definition of gander, is to look at, to look about. And so that male goose has a longer neck. And so it's like the turning of the neck. You're gandering, you're looking over here, so to speak, So referred to as the long-necked goose. Now, not saying that, being a male that he's not going to protect, but as far as being the aggressor is the female. And we always want to protect our families. And as Allah says, also to protect that our husband would have us guard in his absence as well, So that's everything from ourselves to our families, our children, protection of the house itself, and so forth. So we have a job, a major job to do, and when it really kind of look at it from the female standpoint of it, Allah talks about the male being different from the female. That's not just from the physical standpoint, mentally as well. You hear a lot about women are emotional. Yeah, men are too, But when you look at it to say, well, one versus one of the other and so forth and so on, and the man normally, I would say, most men are stronger than women, physically stronger. But when you approach and as you learn how to deal with men and in training and so forth and so on, as a woman, you don't want to stand toe to toe with a man. There are other ways, other things that can be done. And he would just melt for you, right? So there's different things as women that we can do and don't have to deal with that physical strength. Now, of course, there are some women that may be stronger than their mate, but that's not the norm. It's not the norm. So there are signs within that as well. And I heard a speaker once say about how the men are really the legs and the women are the brains. That's not to take anything away from the male. As women, if something needs to be fixed in the house, or this needs to be done and so forth and so on, you tell your husband he has the legs, he goes out and get whatever's needed to make it happen. Same thing, with the community. And we are so blessed that we have a whole surah, because Allah has to give the instructions on how the women needs to be treated. Now, whether or not everyone has read that and had an understanding of how we need to be treated. But there are so many things, there are so many ways where Allah is telling the man, what he needs to do, and he is the most blessed one, the one that takes care of his wife, that's taking care of her, and so forth and so on. So if we do what Allah says, then we will have Allah's protection. And we have to study in order to know what Allah says. We cannot depend on someone else, whether it's another sister, another brother, an imam, or whoever, to always give us the religion, to always tell us what Allah says. I know our imam reminded us on Friday about reading the Quran, and you talk about friends and so forth. The Quran can be your best friend, can be your friend to the point where the Quran can speak for you on the day of judgment. But you have to have a relationship with a friend in order for a friend to vouch for you, right?
That's right.
Is the time up? I hear some music. I hear something going on.
It's in your head, but it is time. So we know that we were actually, thank you very much, Dr. Halallah. We know that our audience and even us, we were able to get some great nuggets this evening on just how to take flight as a people and have great success in our lives and with our families and our businesses and the community. And so we really appreciate you coming on. And, we kind of delved into the book a little bit. We do encourage everyone to get her book. You're able to purchase it on Amazon. You can just search for it online and it should take you to it. Do you have the sense that God gave a goose? So Naima and Zaya, did you guys have anything that you want to say before we close out?
That was excellent.
Alhamdulillah, Allah is most merciful. I was very nervous, very nervous.
Oh no, great job. Great job. Thank you so much for sharing.
Alhamdulillah. Nice being with you ladies this evening.
Yes, it's a pleasure.
Alhamdulillah.
All right, guys. Well, don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yes.
We want you to. Now, before that, Dr. Halallah, you also are an author of some other books. Can you go ahead and mention the other book in case people want to?
That's the only one that I have out on Amazon.
Okay.
The other one was more or less a booklet with the conversation that Prophet Muhammad had with Shaitan. So that was just excerpts and so forth from different other writings that I pulled together. But I will be working on, if Allah wills, something called, what is this thing called? Love. And we'll see how that goes.
Oh, it's going to be lovely. Can't wait for that.
Well, we're going to be checking in with you, and maybe we'll get to have you back to talk about that one.
Yeah.
So everyone, just join us next week. And next week, we're going to have a session dancing through the ages. So be ready. We're going to do that. So the topic is history of dancing among Black people from Africa to America. So we definitely look forward to having you next week as well. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Assalamualaikum.
Have a good evening. Assalamualaikum.
You too. Wa alaikum assalam.